as one, walk with thousands.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Dad Bods Beards. Today we've got a special guest in the studio with us, but before we get to introducing him, we wanted to highlight our sponsor as always, Mountain Ops. You guys have heard us talk about Mountain Ops up and down the street.
Yeah. Trevor Farnes is a good friend of ours. He's the owner of Mountain Ops.
Yeah.
And he wasn't a friend of ours until we started this and we got to get to know him a little bit.
We made him pay us and then we became friends.
Yeah.
That's perfect, right? You got to pay to be our friends.
Yeah.
No, but then we get all these supplements and he introduced us to Brock and helping us train ourselves and all that kind of stuff. And dude, like I was saying, in January, literally 100 yards, my heart was 150
Something
beats.
crazy.
And it took us like 30 minutes to do half a mile or a full mile.
About a mile, yeah.
Oh.
And now we're just like, this Saturday I'm doing 9 miles. He's doing 18 miles. And I'm just like, okay, we're going.
But I mean, before I head out, obviously like the hydration and eating the right foods and stuff helps a lot. But I cannot run, and this is not just a plug because they're a sponsor, but I can't run without the Yeti Mode pre-workout.
Oh.
It makes my face itch.
Oh yeah,
That's why I
just
know
a
it's ready to
tingling.
go.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
But yeah, that, and then I fill my pack or my bottles with the hydrate.
So do I. Lemon lime
going.
is the one I have right now.
And then not sponsored by yet, but my mid-run snack is always nerd clusters. Just a little hit of
Nice,
glucose.
right?
But, as always, guys, we are 100% fueled by Mountain Ops when it comes to the health journey we've been on. You guys have seen the different physical changes Tyson and I have made, along with how it's helped our mental health. So check out mountainops.com.
I don't look pregnant anymore.
No. Debatable. I'm just kidding. Code Dad Bods will get you 20% off, and every order purchased at Mountain Ops goes to feeding families in need. So as always, guys, check those out. So without further ado, I want to introduce our guest here, Bill Schuffenhauer.
Boom.
We're just going to call you Shiffy because it's
Shiffy,
the
that
one
works.
time you're going to get it out of me.
My son will be proud.
Yeah.
Because he coined the name through high school, Shiffy, because everyone couldn't say Schuffenhauer. So
See, I like that because, so my name's Logan Peterson.
right.
But when my brother was playing football, there was two David Petersons.
Okay.
So he got called Petey. So nobody really got
Was
it.
he the smaller guy?
I don't know. I can't remember. He just was like one was Peterson and one was Petey. So he
Okay.
got called Petey, and then that stuck with me. So it's funny, like someone else just kind of getting the Shiffy Petey.
And if you're Latin, you can't say my last name. Because it's all red, but they always say Ayed. Ayed.
Oh, double L.
Yep.
Like that took me a minute.
Yeah, they call you, and like, is Tyson Ayed there? I'm like,
I don't know, man. You might want to go with that one because that one's a little sexier. But so can you give, for anybody who doesn't know you, can you give us a quick rundown or even give us a long rundown and let us know who you are?
Yeah. First off, these are my two new friends, so I'm friends of theirs now. Bill
Absolutely.
Schuffenhauer, 3-time Olympian, Olympic silver medalist with Team USA. Did that for a lot of years. Ran track with Team USA. Played some semi-pro football, and now in my post-Olympic career, I am a hardcore entrepreneur that plays in a lot of spaces and owns a bunch of companies and travels the world and does a lot of stuff with the Olympics still. And
are you interested in a beard care company?
very possibly.
I'm just joking.
Yeah. But yeah, so I still live here in Salt Lake City, Utah for the time being, and father, husband, family man now, and just enjoying life to the fullest.
Yeah.
Nice,
So-
man. Has Salt Lake always been home? Or-
Yeah, born and raised here. So
Okay.
yeah, in 2002, I was the only native Utahn on the Olympic team.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
So I met him when I was barely in high school. I was just a Will guy. And I remember you walking into church and I'm like, dude, that guy's yoked. And I was really like, holy crap. And then my dad told me who he was, and you were I was going to say auditioning, but you're trying out for, my son does plays.
Yeah.
But you were trying out for the decathlon, correct?
Yep.
You know, like, I really want to talk about resilience because you've gone through a lot, you've battled a lot, and I think resilience is really on my mind since we did the neuromastery thing, where my goal is to stick with it.
Yep.
And fight and continue going on the hard battle, because sometimes I, like with running, I don't want to keep running.
Running's hard.
Yeah, and so I really want to talk to you because you've gone through a lot of things with resilience. And so I just kind of want to like go through your life, if that's okay. And just,
Yeah, absolutely.
and we can start from the beginning if you don't mind.
Yeah, dude, it's
from
an open
that
book.
point. Yeah.
Let's do it. 100%.
So you kind of want to start kind of like where I met you and what you were doing, and then we can kind of move forward that way.
Yeah. You want me to start there?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So kind of the place he picked up of, I was training for Team USA in the sport of decathlon, so track and field. I was favored to make the Olympic team in 2000 in the Sydney Olympics, top 5 in the world at the time. And everything was going perfect. Continued to get better every meet we did, whether it was a decathlon meet or an individual meet. Circled back around with my coaches at Weber State, and it was like the moment where we were like, there's no way that this can fail. Everything is going so well.
How fast were you in your 400, 100, 200? Because you have to do all those, don't you?
Oh, so yeah. So we'll give everyone the events in the decathlon.
Like, if you're I'm like curious.
Yeah. So all the events in the decathlon are 100 meters. My fastest time is 10:56. Long jump, I was a 25-foot long jumper.
Dang.
Shot put, I was a 53-foot shot putter. High jump, I was a 6'11 3/4 high jumper.
You could jump over me and Logan.
Yeah.
With a foot to spare on me.
I've always wondered how they get your body over. That's crazy, man.
Yeah, I wonder it more now since I'm not that athletic anymore. But
Now your back creaks when you get out of bed.
Oh my gosh, yeah. One of my good friends, Dan Clark, he's one of the top motivational speakers in the world, Utah, local guy. He says, Schuffenhauer, you know how you know when you're getting old? And I was like, Dan, no. He says, you go to bed healthy and you wake up with injuries. And I was like, yeah, that is me.
I'm only 35 and I'm already experiencing that.
So at the end of the first day, you've got the 400. So my PR in the 400 is just mid 47s. And then the next day you have 5 more events. So you got, you're sore as you could possibly be. You got to get up. You've got to get inspired and motivated to go out there and put 12 hours in at the highest level again. So you have the 110 meter hurdles. I was a 14.5 guy. Discus, 176 discus thrower, pole vault, 15 feet, javelin, 226, and the 1500 meters. And I was a 426, 1500 meter guy, which equates to about a
Did you ever do what the French guy did in pole vault?
Like, I didn't see what he did.
You remember his junk hit the pole?
You and I are on very different sides of social media.
I was like, okay, well, depends on what you're asking. I've broken a pole. I've had a pole come back and smack me. I've had it shoot me off the pole vault pads onto the ground and landed on my tail end and all. Yeah.
Did you spike yourself? I've
done all the stuff. Yeah. So basically that's the decathlon. And basically what happens is, depending on each individual performance, there's a decathlon book that has every measurement that would be relative to that event, and it's worth X amount of points. And so the better you do, the more points you acquire, and at the end of it, you just add it. Well, they're being added up the whole time for strategy, but you add it up, and then whoever has the most points wins.
And what happened?
Well, getting ready for the Sydney Olympics, again, everyone, we all were like, this is it. I mean, I qualified earlier in the year at University or Utah State. At that time was ranked number 1 in the world. Went down to a BYU meet 2 weeks before Olympic trials, and it was raining kind of like a day like this. And during the second event, which is a long jump, slipped on the track, and my spikes caught as I was slipping and just basically almost tore my ankle off my foot. And that was the end of my Olympic dreams, because Olympic trials were only 2 weeks away.
Yeah.
And so I ended up being on crutches for 3 months after that. I was I was super devastated that my entire Olympic dreams had gone down the tube. I felt like I'd let down my family, my friends, and my coaches, and just tucked my tail and went back home and just felt sorry for myself for a few months. And as things started getting better, started trying to figure out, like, okay, what am I going to do now? Like, I'd promised my partner at the time, if I didn't make that Olympics, that I would go back and finish school and be a regular guy and get a regular job and all that stuff. And fortunately, the universe or God or whatever people want to identify with, is always bringing you opportunities if we're paying attention. And I had somebody that knew somebody else that said, hey, you should do bobsled. And I was like, huh? Bob what? And they're like, yeah, guys like you, track and field and football guys that are fast and powerful and explosive are like perfect for this sport called bobsled. And I was like, well, I don't even know what bobsled is, but tell me more about it. And they're like,
you've never seen Cool Running?
I hadn't at the time.
Oh my goodness.
and so it's kind of progressed that way. They're like, well, the Olympics are coming to Salt Lake City. I'm like, no. The Olympics were in Sydney. They're like, no, the Winter Olympics. And I'm like, I didn't even know that there were
Oh, really?
a Winter Olympics at all.
You're so tunnel vision.
Total ton of vision for
Well, I mean, that's respectable,
the
though.
Summer Olympics, you know. And then after they said, well, you know, the bobsled is this sport and it's 2-man and 4-man and it's going to be here in Salt Lake City. And here's the movie. Check out this movie. And you'd mentioned it
Cool
already.
Runnings, no way.
Sent me the movie Cool Runnings.
I love that movie so
And
much.
so, right. So I'm watching
have a
this
lucky
movie.
egg?
I don't. I thought about it, but there's absolutely no way you could keep an egg from breaking inside a bobsled. And so I had the opportunity to watch John Candy and the team do their thing on Cool Runnings, and it kind of sparked like the interest a little bit. And then when I had an opportunity to watch Team USA competing over in St. Moritz, Switzerland, and I saw like the actual athleticism and explosive and the horsepower it took to be a great bobsledder.
Oh, dude, they run so
I was
hard.
like, yeah,
Those dudes quads. are just-
I want to be a part of that. And so we got together as a team, my coaches and my family, because it was a big decision, right? I'd already told them that if I didn't make, Sydney, that I was done. And we just sat down kind of like this and said, let's look at the possibilities. One, we have a year and 3 months to try and make an Olympic team in a sport we've never done. Mm-hmm. Two, you're still in great shape. And three, at the end of it, we said, why not? Why not us? What if we could create this story of this kid who grew up on the streets of Salt Lake City to overcome all adversity and make his Olympic team in his own home state where he was homeless and drug addicted parents and gang banging and in trouble with the law. And it just made perfect sense. We had absolutely nothing to lose. It wasn't a gamble other than, see what we can do within the next year and 3 months and take the same focus we had for track and field and just put it over into bobsled and go for it and to see what happens. And lo and behold, with, I don't want to say a lot of hard work because the hard work had already been put in training for Sydney. It was just kind of redirecting the focus, right? And so we just redirected the focus and gave that tunnel vision from track and field to bobsled, and in a year and 3 months, made the Olympic team here in Salt Lake City.
Well, that's the crazy thing is like, as a guy who's obviously the furthest thing from probably from an Olympian.
Whatever. I was just thinking we should all like
Go
start practicing.
bobsledding?
No, start practicing for curling.
Oh,
Right?
Sure. I don't think I
We
can-
could do it.
I don't have the hip
My
flex
knees
for
will
that.
not. I can't be down like that. So somebody else is going
I haven't even played
The
that.
way that like that, they got one knee by their ear and their, and their foot, and like no. Whereas like to go from, I mean, obviously you were already a training Olympian,
Yeah.
right? But to pick up a sport you've never done, never even heard of,
Yeah.
and then go compete in it on the world stage, in 15 months is nuts.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And I wasn't welcomed by the Olympic
Oh,
family
I'm sure. I was gonna say,
whatsoever.
Oh, you
because
weren't?
probably,
No.
that's like I was gonna say. That's
Yeah.
like blurred crossed lines, right?
Right.
Like you're going from like the Summer Olympics to like the Winter Olympics. It's the
and
opposite.
showing up like a year and 3 months before the Olympic
Versus the
Games.
people
And
who-
So how?
been
So is
training.
it just there's just the four best make that team, and then you got to make it work? All right. Speaking of train well,
We weren't speaking of Trainwell, but we are now.
I love that we can talk to Nate on a daily basis, our trainer. I love that I can communicate and he gets back to us. The trainer gets back to us very, very quick.
Well, the cool thing is by enabling the push notifications on the app, I just treat it kind of like a text message with Nate. And it's not just the workouts. He's been giving me advice outside of the workouts of like, hey, get a foam roller, get a tennis ball, roll out this muscle, roll out this ligament. Cool thing is too, is that if you've ever used a workout app before, it can be very hands-on with like putting in the weight, putting in the sets, hitting complete, hitting rest, start, rest, stop. So there is a lot of integration with smartwatches, whether it's an Apple or a Garmin or an Android watch. It'll track your movement.
And then when you're done with your workout, like just the movement, like a set, you can hit notes and type him a note. Say, hey, this is 225. This is too light. Or, hey, this doesn't feel right on my shoulder. What am I doing wrong? And then film it and then send it to him and all that kind of stuff. Like, it's really cool. There's like, hey, you need to roll your shoulders back and lean into it. Like, okay, that's what I was doing wrong.
I like it. I use it obviously multiple times a week. It's kind of like a little bit of a game too, because it's like you're on a workout streak. And then like last night, I hadn't gotten to the gym till probably almost 10 o'clock. And it was like, your streak's in jeopardy. But I love Trainwell. It loves
last
me.
night.
I love Trainwell. It loves me. So if you're looking for a better way to work out with the help that you need right in your own pocket, check out Trainwell. Go to go.trainwell.net/Dad Bods and Beards.
Yeah, so for an Olympic year, and especially one that's in the U.S., The U.S. gets 3 sleds. They all have to qualify though, so they have to qualify in all the tracks and time. So there were 3 options that I could have looked at. Fortunately, when I first got involved with bobsled, I was on like Team USA 5 with my driver Bruce Roselli. Bruce is responsible for bringing every one of the very best athletes in U.S. history into the sport of bobsled. So I was with him for the first year. And as we weren't really hitting the numbers on that team, I started having like Team USA 1, 2, and 3 asking if I'd be interested in switching over. And I was committed to Bruce at the time, but at the end of the day, like the numbers just weren't making sense. And it was when Team USA 1, which is the #1 ranked team in the world with Todd Hayes and Garrett Hines and Randy Jones, approached me and Pavle Jovanovic, and they said, hey, listen, we have this opportunity to bring on alternate onto our team. And they'd watch me for that first year doing some of the lower competitions, America's Cup and in Calgary and here in Salt Lake City and Park City and then as well as Lake Placid. And I did Europa Cup over in Europe a little bit. And they just said, you fit the mold of what this team needs. And, you know, if anything happens, we think you would be the very best option out of all the athletes to literally jump in and not skip a beat. And so they basically offered me that Willy Wonka ticket, right, to make the Olympic team, but as an alternate at the team. And I walked away from that meeting. I was telling them, well, hey, you know what? I really appreciate the offer, but I got to go talk to my team. Let me, you know, let them know what's going on and see if it's okay with them. And the interesting thing, I saw the look on their face, like, what? Like, we just offered you. Yeah, like, what do you do?
Instantly, yeah.
And so I walked away from it originally and set a meeting with my team and sat down with them at a restaurant for breakfast like this and told all my teammates, and every one of my teammates had given me their blessing, and my driver Bruce Roselli was pretty upset because this has happened to him in the past. But I think it was, you know, my teammates said it perfectly, like, this is what you've been waiting for. Yeah. This is your Willy Wonka ticket that you've been waiting for, and it is your time to shine. And, you know, their chances of making the Olympic team significantly dropped without me on there. And we sat together like a bunch of grown men and cried together. And they told me, you know, how much.
Like me, Logan.
Right, exactly. And so, yeah, after that, when I got their blessing, I called Todd back up and said, yeah, let's do it. And so just ended up being an alternate for the most part of that year. And then one of the teammates on the team had an issue that he wasn't going to be able to compete, and I slid, no pun intended.
I was going to say every pun intended.
Yeah. Ended up sliding into his position, and that got announced like literally the week before the Olympics here in Salt Lake City. So,
and when you hear that, how were the nerves?
Oh man, it's they were all over the place because you know, the expectation, I was just there to help support the team, and they were the best pushing team in the world. So I truly didn't think there was an opportunity for me to step in and compete. You always wish in the back of your mind. But when the announcement was made, we were in San Diego at the Olympic Training Center, just getting nice warm sun before the Olympics and getting refreshed. And the coaches came up and said, hey, here's the situation. I need you to be ready to go. And so I had flipped a switch immediately to prepare to like stand on the biggest stage in sports in my hometown and represent not only the United States of America, but represent Utah as an athlete. And the nerves were going, but I knew that I had done everything that I needed to do as an athlete, both physically and mentally, to prepare for this moment. And so all I had to do was go up there, and I didn't have to try any harder, just execute and do what I've done in the past to get me to where I was.
That's crazy. If you don't mind, you said something earlier I wanted to go back to. So like, obviously you have the Olympic career, not without overshadowing it though, but so you guys obviously you medaled.
Silver. Yep.
That's nuts.
He has the medal right there. I want to see
it. It'd be weird if you were like, no, I didn't medal, and it's just like sitting right there. But you said the thing's about a pound. Jeez, that thing's so rad. So how is it, really, if you don't mind, if we're going back?
Yeah.
She said born and raised here in Salt Lake, but you had kind of a rough upbringing.
Yeah.
So can we go back there? Or
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm just showing them. This is really cool. I've never held a medal before. Now I can say I have.
So if you don't mind, can you give us
Thanks for showing that.
Let's go. Go back a little bit to like younger Bill, or I don't know if you were Will back then, or William, or however you went back. But
Still little Billy.
Little Billy. Yeah. So what was the upbringing like? What's the memories that kind of built that story?
Yeah, so the 30,000-foot view. I was born to a mom who was one of the most well-known drug moms here in Utah. She was considered the street mom. All the homeless people, all the drug people called her the street mom. She was very well known to the law enforcement, legal system here. So my life back then was filled with that type of chaos. A lot of drugs, a lot of alcohol, a lot of trouble with the law. I was in and out of 17 different foster homes as a kid myself. I've seen some of the worst stuff. Had one of my best friends, I showed up at his house right after they got robbed and he got his leg blown off as a little kid. I've seen my mom overdose, seen my mom rip people off, people try to rip her off. I've been ripped off. So I lived this chaotic lifestyle that most people don't even know it existed.
From a child.
Yeah, from a childhood.
Oh, geez.
And at one point in time, probably right around 7th grade, I was still living here in Salt Lake. My mom had gotten me back again from foster care, and then she got in trouble again because she was, it is what it is. She had an addiction to drugs and alcohol pretty severely. And so the state gave my grandmother an option, Sadie, to either take me in or they were going to take me into my 18th foster home. And at that time, my grandma moved to Roy, Utah. And
where I was.
Right? Yeah. Up in our hood, which eventually became my hood.
Yeah.
So I ended up moving to Roy, Utah as a 7th grader. And I remember walking into Sandridge Junior High that first day.
That's where I went.
I was just like, I do not fit. I mean, I had a big giant afro, like tattered clothes. And I remember walking in Sandridge, just seeing a whole bunch of kids that looked nothing like me at all. They were all nice, clean cut, happy, nice clothes. And the energy, instead of focusing on how different I was, I focused on the positive energy that I felt from Sandridge at the time. And that's what inspired me to start moving forward with knowing that I could create a life by design, even as a young kid, that I didn't have to follow in the footsteps of my mom and my stepdad and my brothers and sisters and all that stuff. And
these are thoughts you had in 7th grade.
At a 7th grade. Yep.
Well, when you're an Olympic athlete, you have a different mindset.
But I'm saying, like, that's it's almost the exact contrast,
right?
From, we talked about this before we started rolling. Kyle Kilausing, he was on here. He was literally like ranked 4th in junior golf champion of in the world behind Tiger Woods,
right?
And then he actually ended up getting involved with meth.
Yep.
And then his whole world. So he had the exact almost opposite, where he started with every opportunity in the world, right? Living with his grandparents on a golf course, and then he ended up getting in trouble. And then he created the story he has now, versus you had the crazy hard upbringing, and then you had your change come later as a teenager.
Yeah. And I think maybe the difference, obviously, well, there's a lot of differences, but like I witnessed all that chaos as a kid. I watched my mom and her friends shoot up. I watched my mom get the hell beat out of her from random people.
Sure.
I watched my mom and my stepdad be arrested and taken to jail and prison several times. I've watched bad drug deals. I've watched gangbang stuff happen. And so when I moved to Roy and to Sandridge, that for me was an opportunity to escape that life.
I love that.
And I didn't know how at the time, but I was like, I got to figure this out. And so, I took notice of one kid, Jake Schultz. He's in my documentary. And he was the kid that everyone loved. Everyone looked up to him as a 7th grader, played all the sports. And I was like, I want to know what that feels like. What do I have to do to pursue that? And so, I didn't have the tools and resources as a young kid with my grandma, although she did great for me and my aunts and uncles and stuff. So I decided to reach out to my teachers and the coaches at the time, even though my first year I got kicked off. My first year trying out was 8th grade, and I got kicked off the team for mouthing off weird. But when I got kicked off the team on that 8th grade year, I got kicked off for mouthing off, and then I also got kicked off for robbing Bingham Schwinn in Sunset.
Yeah. Still there.
Yeah, at the time. And that was a massive wake-up call, because I was like, this is not the direction I wanted to go. And in my world today, we always say you can't build an architecture of new within the old walls of the one that never worked. And so I went to my coaches and my teachers and said, hey, listen, this is what I want to do. I don't know how to go about it the right way. Would you be willing to help me out? And that was the first time that I had what I would consider a true mentor in my teachers and my coaches that stayed after school to help me get my grades up, because I had all Fs and a D-, and went from that to a 3.6 my 9th grade year. They helped me understand the value of teamwork, understand the value of integrity, understood the value of goal setting and execution and strategy and all that stuff. And although I didn't know these big words back then, right, I was just consuming this different language, if you will, for me, and trying
get a hunger for it.
Right. Oh yeah.
Which I can just, like, from a perspective, right? I can just imagine a teacher like seeing the students you were, and then like you coming to them and being like what? Right. You want to do that? And then like that's a teacher's dream of, right? Of like taking the one kid that they just wish would apply himself a little bit more. Yeah. And then, you're setting the stage for yourself, right? So I'm sitting here thinking, like, you're basically the life of the everyday average kid that doesn't have, all the different traumas that you experienced. Like, that was like this dream life that you just got dumped into, of like, that all the rest of us just kind of took for granted, right? Yeah. Like, of just like getting to go to school.
Whatever. I grew up in Shelley, Idaho.
Yeah. It's like, even me growing up in California, I mean, there was different gang activity and stuff around where I grew up in Sacramento and stuff, but I still grew up in a relatively safe place. And I mean, it's just kind of like, I'm sitting here thinking, like, I got different kids that are running through my brain that I grew up with. And I'm like, oh, now that I look back, I mean, he probably was going through some stuff. Right. Because like, oh, look at what his home life was like, seeing the different perspective of like how traumatic experiences will shift your whole like perspective, your personality, your decision-making process, even as a young kid. So like, you're giving me a whole different perspective on even how I was raised and what I witnessed from other kids. And so that's like really interesting. Yeah. Think about it that way.
It's literally the number one question I get asked is how did you have the mindset of a 7th grader to make some of those decisions to try and escape that? And for me, obviously not knowing what the mindset was back then or what even mindset was, it was just more about trying to escape that life and saying, how far can I get away from that? But
it seemed like you struggled for a second until you figured that out.
Oh yeah, it's always a struggle. Yeah. I mean, anytime you want to accomplish something that's above and beyond, there's going to be, it's going to be hard, it's going to be difficult, and you're going to fall, you're going to fail. But you have to learn from those situations to continue to get better and better, sharpen the stone, if you will.
That's me.
And I've just I've utilized those principles and philosophies my entire life, and it really, my life is one that I typically seek out the harder things that most people won't, because I know it's going to be a hard road. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be something most people aren't willing to do. But at the end of the day, it's a lot more rewarding.
So kind of moving forward, after you get your Olympic medal, kind of walk us through what kind of happened, because we're talking before and I'm like, you got to stop. You can't say anything because I want to hear it when, like, I want it raw and everything. So moving forward from after you get the Olympics and you get home from the Olympics, well, you're already home, but you kind of just had the biggest moment in your entire life. And then what happens?
Well, after that, do you want to get to talk about what we started talking about?
Well, if that's to that point, because there's a lot, Yeah,
because after 2002, after I won the medal, it was the first Olympic medal for Team USA in 46 years. My college coach, Dan, always told me any fool could do it once. And so I set out to do 2 more Olympic games. So I competed in 2006 in Torino, Italy, and then 2010 in Vancouver. And Vancouver was definitely like the hardest Olympics for me because I was the old guy on the block and everything hurt a lot more. And
well, how old is an old guy?
I was 38 at the time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I was 38 competing against 22, 23-year-old young bucks that are just stacked like I was back in the day. But then I retired after 2010. And that's where like things got really difficult for about 8.5 years. And it's something that is talked about universally across Olympic sports and all sports and military, is that loss of identity. I spent so many years creating this athletic persona for myself and traveling the world and doing Olympics and world championships and national championships and White House visits and fundraisers for some of the biggest organizations in the world and speaking to some of the biggest groups in the world about leadership. And when I retired from the Olympics and all that stuff kind of went away, I had a loss of identity and I was completely lost and didn't know how to get out of it, because I didn't have coaches with me anymore. I didn't have teammates around me anymore. I didn't have the support system I did as an athlete in the quote unquote real world. And that took me down a very, very dark path, one that I wouldn't even wish on my worst enemy if I had one, of alcoholism, addiction, victim mentality, self-sabotage, you name it. I was involved with it, getting in trouble with the law. 3 DUIs, 2 aggravated assaults. I basically had reached the top of my world and then fell completely back off the mountain and then fell under the mountain. And that led to me not being able to hold a job, ruin my relationships with pretty much everyone around me. And it wasn't until probably right around 2018, I was borderline getting ready to give up again, do another suicide attempt. And that's when I connected with a guy by the name of Chad LaFavor, who is the founder of an organization that I'm a partner in now called TMIC, which stands for the Most Important Conversation. And he and I jumped on a call. We were talking about some other business stuff, and he said, "Hey, I'm going to be doing this like online coaching program. No one's done it before, but I'd be interested to see if you want to do it." And I was like, "Coaching program? Like for what? Right? Like what are you talking about?" And mind you, I was literally at the same time planning my next suicide attempt to ensure that I was successful. And we get on a phone call, and the first thing he says on this Zoom call is like, "Do you lead life by default or do you lead life by design?" Ooh. And I was like, ooh, yeah, that caught my attention. Mm-hmm. And he said, "Well, if you lead life by design, then everything's going well in your life, your relationships, your job, your career, your emotional intelligence, your emotional sobriety, all the things are going really, really well in your life." He says, "But most people in our society today are impacted by the external factors." And I'm like, yeah, oh yeah. And if you lead life by default, then you don't have a good life. You're depressed, you're miserable, your relationships suck, your career sucks, your job sucks. And I was just checking, when he's talking about leading life by default, I was checking every box and then adding some boxes to it. And he says, "But it's not too late if you lead a life by default, is to go look in the mirror." It's called mirror work, and have a real conversation with yourself and take responsibility, 100% accountability. Another thing I learned from Jack Canfield, author of all the Chicken Soup for Your Soul books, is taking that 100% accountability. And he said, "But if you are in that default space, it's not too late to take a look at what you've created, taking that responsibility, and let's look at your entire architecture and look at the things that are not serving you, of why you've created this life by default, and start decluttering those things out of your life." And that includes people, places, things, processes, practices, and start replacing them with healthier, all of those things. And I was literally, I was doing this mirror work, literally started crying. I was at home by myself. And at this point in time, I was isolated, crying, victim mentality. And I was just like, whether people out there want to identify with God or the universal energy, I knew I was being given a second chance. And it reminded me that I already had built a massive toolbox of success principles through being an Olympian and achieving Olympic status and Olympic medal and all that stuff. And so we proceeded on really, well, I had to proceed first and foremost of acknowledging this crappy world that I created and saying, okay, let's start from ground zero and start moving one step at a time to figure this out.
Okay. I love what you're saying. The way my brain is going is, can you give us, selfishly almost, but also for everybody who's listening,
I think you're going to ask the same question I want.
give us an example of mirror work.
That's it.
Yeah.
Because I'm sitting here, I'm like, you and I both need to do this now.
No, so when I went to therapy, the very first day of therapy, He said, "Okay, I need you to look in the mirror for a minute. Don't say anything." I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've done similar things like that, but I want to hear what your explanation of your experience of what mirror work is that like.
You guys, you're the first people who've asked me this. It's a pretty emotional thing because it's pretty powerful. But it's like he was talking about, right? Is that you sit in front of a mirror and you literally, what I did is I didn't have anybody to show me how to do this. It somehow came to me. I literally stared in the mirror like deep into my eyes until I actually saw myself. I mean, you think about it, we get up every day, we shave, brush our teeth, whatever, check ourselves out, selfies, whatever, but we never take the time to truly look and stare in the mirror at ourselves. We can hardly stare at somebody else for 30 seconds, let alone, and mine probably took 5 minutes of nonstop staring at the mirror, looking at myself, and I can't even tell you what it's like until you actually go through it. When I finally saw myself, for the first time in 48 years, I started having a conversation with this person. And it wasn't victim mentality. It wasn't blaming. It was more of like trying to have a conversation of inspiring this person who was realistically in a way talking back to me. It was kind of weird because it was only me. It was only me truly talking. But reminding myself of who I was as a human being and the values and the tools that I have. And at the end of the day, what is it that you truly want to accomplish in life? And you start having the conversations and talking about things that you can't be doing. If you want to achieve this, you can't be doing drugs and alcohol and getting in trouble with the law, and reminding yourself of how good of a person you can be if you really put your mind to it. And if you allow the biggest problem in most people's life, the ego, to get the hell out of the way, we can start moving forward. And
how were you able to forgive yourself?
You have to, because at the end of the day, right? Like if you don't forgive yourself, that's not serving you in any way, shape, or form.
I don't mean that like, oh, you're a horrible person. How did you forgive her? No, it's just like with all of us, we know a specific person who messages us all the time. It's just like he's in the victim mentality, and all this kind of stuff. And I'm just like, so we have that deep conversation with ourselves, but at the same time, it's still really hard. It is still really hard to forgive yourself, especially with the things like you feel like you might have hurt someone or hurt, even yourself. And so that's why I asked is like, I know you say you have to, but there's got to be something.
But it is a practice, and it is a long-term. I mean, I still do that today. I still have to go through things all the time, very less frequently than back then, because I've literally now have created this life by design. But it is something that you have to remind yourself every day, and you have to create a kind of a structure and a process for yourself that some of the things that you were doing are things you can no longer do. And if I don't forgive myself, the person who's going to come down the hardest on me is going to be me. And if I don't forgive myself, then I'm going to continue to hold myself back from taking steps forward.
I'm thinking as you're talking, because I really, really like this conversation. Logan and I have a schedule of running. And this, we're going to run Mondays, we're going to run Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. So do you have is this, I'm just thinking out loud, it's almost like you have to schedule time for yourself to do this.
100%.
So like you wake up in the morning, like, I'm going to spend 10 minutes and stare at myself and talk to myself and forgive myself. And I don't know, I'm just thinking out loud because I'm like, because if I don't schedule that, I won't do it because it's embarrassing to me, even though it's just me.
Yeah. No, it is. It's putting yourself in an uncomfortable position you've never been in.
Yeah.
Same thing with what you guys are doing right now, right? How you even brought it up, right? The first time you tried to run a mile,
dude, I couldn't.
Brutal. You almost died, right? And that's literally how I felt, is looking in the mirror and acknowledging myself as a human being, recognizing my faults and the things I've done wrong. And then you start to try and forgive yourselves for some of those things one at a time. And then you start, it's very similar to AA, if you will, for people out there that know it. Then you've got to go out and start asking people to forgive you, that you've acknowledged the wrong that you've done to them. Same thing, acknowledging the wrongs you've done to yourself. And then you have to continue to practice it, right? What happens, with the two of you, if from here until your competition, if you missed 2 workouts a week, right? Then you're taking steps back. So it's as important as training for any sport or any business. it's even more important because we're talking about your life, you as a human being. If we don't practice being great human beings, what do we practice being? Right?
Yeah.
We're allowing the external forces of life around us to impact us and negatively influence us. And if we're not taking accountability for our own life, somebody else will, and it's going to take us off into a no man's land, if you will.
Well, it's like I'm almost sitting here thinking like, well, I know what the title of this episode is going to be, like something to do with default or design.
Right.
Because that one statement, that one question that he asked you alone is the question I feel like everybody should ask themselves, whether you're trying to go down the self-improvement route or the self-love route or the self-forgiveness or the self-anything route. That applies to literally everybody. Yeah. Because it's, I was just talking with, you barely missed him, one of our buddies that we've had on the show. He's feeds our sneaker addiction. Yeah. He does custom sneakers and stuff. And the guy's built a massive.
Don't introduce me to him.
Yeah, he's built.
Dude, he's amazing.
He's built.
We will the next sneaker night. We're going to invite you.
Yeah,
it's happening.
So he's built such a cool design with literally his business model of customizing sneakers, and he does all this cool stuff. But he and I were just chatting before you came here, and we were, almost like gratefully commiserating about stresses of being entrepreneurs and building things, and like being grateful to have the stress, but sometimes it gets really heavy.
Yeah.
But just that thought of, even in the spaces that he and I are in right now, these just really uncomfortable growth stage of, too much month left at the end of the money, right? Like, still sitting here thinking like we still have the opportunity to, well, am I designing this life that I'm living right now, or am I just reacting to it? And you're realizing as the different people that we've met, the different entrepreneurs, the different people who have come back from something crazy versus the people who have just had a pretty even-keeled life, but then they've made it something big. Everybody has processes. Yeah. Everybody has a plan. Yeah. Everybody has these non-negotiables. Like our buddy Corey that we had on here. He's like, I get up at 5:30 every single day to work out, even if I went to bed at 4:00. He's like, the day that I don't get up at 5:30 and follow my process, he's like, the whole day is shot.
Game changer.
So that was probably the biggest nugget I'm going to take away from this whole thing is default versus design.
Nice. And and to answer your question too, like you asked me about, like, kind of you were alluding to it just now, is since I connected with TMIC, which was in 2018, I started instilling those processes because I knew as an athlete what needed to be done. If I don't get my tail up in the morning and practice, then back as an athlete, I knew my competition was going to kick my tail. Right. And so it's the mistake that most people make in this self-help world is that we're like, oh, I'm going to go see a Tony Robbins, or I'm going to go to this, and I'm going to go do this. And they consume all this information, but they don't implement it into their day-to-day. And so they're not practicing it. They're talking about it. And so I knew that there's no way, because as an athlete, I can't talk about being the best. I had to go out there and put the work in to be the best. And so I knew I had to do this same thing with this TMIC, this recreation of who I was going to be as a human being, and start implementing the practices on a daily basis. And consistently doing AARs, after action reviews. The military do them a lot of, okay, today I did this. What went well? What didn't go well? And what could I do to get better? Or, I need to have this person within my architecture.
Do you journal this like legit, or just go?
Oh man, I got so many stuff jourналed, and
you do.
Oh my gosh, yeah, tons of stuff.
So I've heard journaling. I know journaling.
Mine's not like formal journaling, but I have a lot of stuff written down in
I like to use voice notes, and then it types it out for you. Just
that, and I have notes, and I've got notes that's what I do. on end. So I have somewhat a bunch of journals, and then a ton of stuff in here. Yeah. And then our executive team with TMIC, we get up every morning. Doesn't matter where you are, the time's the same. And for some people that are halfway around the world, they have to accommodate the time. But we get up together and we meditate on specific subjects for 15 to 30 minutes, and then we meditate silently. We call it the watcher observer meditation, where you're kind of watching and observing your own thoughts, your own things that are going on in your head. And that's a non-negotiable for me, because I know if I start my day with that, getting in tune with who I am as a human being first thing in the morning, I'm going to go out and dominate the day in whatever I'm doing.
So how long did it take you from your first initial meeting with him, staring in the mirror, doing the mirror work, how long did it take you to kind of evolve into who you are now, being able to move forward with excitement and grace and giving yourself grace and all that kind of stuff. How long did it take you?
But it's still taking me. I mean, it is what it is,
Yeah.
right? There's not an end game to what I'm doing.
I agree with that
right?
because we were talking about this. Like when you do hard things.
Yeah. I mean, obviously that first conversation was pretty powerful for me, and it sparked enough interest in me that even though at that time I was so devastated still because I had legal issues, I had alcohol issue problems, I had weekend warrior drinking and drug problems, and I was doing all these things. But it took time to start to declutter all these things out of my life. And that's maybe another important thing is too many people are looking for the near win in life, and there's no success.
Because we all want a pill.
Yeah, no, there's no success in near wins. I don't care what people try to pitch you on TV or talking about 10xing your company. I could sit here and give you guys the best podcast information in the world, but if you don't pull it into your own architecture and you don't start practicing it, it's never going to work, right? And so I know that, and I knew that as an athlete and as a human being, that this was going to be a long process, and there was no end in mind.
Did it ever get overwhelming?
Oh, absolutely.
Because everything you're telling me, like I'm like, okay, I need to implement a lot, and as you're talking, I'm like, this is a lot.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing too, right? Is I'm literally a fish out of water, and the thing that most people do when they're a fish out of water is they say, "To hell with this, I'm going back to my comfort zone."
Yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, "Nope, I'm going to somehow figure out how to breathe out of water."
Well, and it's a very eye-opening thing when you recognize, like, the last time I had my like depression snack,
Yeah.
I'm like literally in my brain, I'm like, oh, this is my depression food. Like
Right.
it was literally like I knew in that moment of like, oh, this is my fallback.
Yeah.
Like this is what I do when I'm struggling and I'm going into default mode. So as we're wrapping up here, one of the big things that we talk about all the time is it's kind of the motto with the show and what we do is it starts with you.
Yeah.
There's a million self-help, everything out there. I mean, Utah is literally, I feel like, the epicenter of like, let me tell
It's
you.
taken over our
let
MLM
me tell
industry.
you how to live your
Yes,
life.
yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
I won't go into it, but I mean, there's,
If you live in Utah
It is that
County,
way everywhere.
Well, I
Just
mean-
to let you know, it's that way everywhere.
if you live
yeah.
in
Yeah.
Utah County,
well, I mean, there was a guy that got a big, let me tell you how to live your life here, who just got smacked with
Yeah.
a big jail time.
Yeah.
But my point being is, one of the big things that we try to do different is like we don't try to go the big alpha bro aspect of it. We try to do like the vulnerability. We talk
Yeah.
about it, but then we also try to hit you with like, hey, but now you got to do something about
Yeah.
it. We're not just going to sit here for 45 minutes to an hour once a week and tell you all this good feeling stuff. So with that in mind of, it starts with you. What's the response that you would have to, like I said, Tyson and I go 15, 20 guys a week that we regularly are messaging with,
Yeah.
right? And that's the reason why we do what we do. The guys that always seem to have an excuse or a reason or a whatever, like having a guy that literally you've had probably every excuse and every reason that people can't argue with because they'll never explain that or experience that. What's the response of that you would maybe have for somebody like that of why they can't do the mirror work figuratively and literally to change their own life?
Yeah. It's, the mirror work's going to be hard. I'm not going to lie. It's not saying that they can't get to it, but they need to have that conversation with themselves of, at the end of the day, what do I really want to accomplish in life? As a human being, as a man, what do I want to do? And when you figure out what that is, start to reverse engineer that and then figure out who you need within your architecture, your community. I mean, we all know how important community is. And then start being the most vulnerable damn human you could possibly be. Because if you don't take the accountability, if you don't get vulnerable, nothing is going to change. We always say nothing changes if nothing changes, right? And that's why, I created my own quote that dreams are only dreams until we take the actions to ignite them. So what actions are you willing to take today to change your tomorrow?
Ooh.
I like that a lot.
What actions are you willing to take today to change your tomorrow? That's a heavy one. I mean, we put a quote on before every show on the episode.
I feel like I need to go do 100 sit-ups now.
Yeah. I don't think I can do 100 cities. But no,
I was going to say, should we just go to Taco Bell instead?
bro, yeah.
No, it's smoked taco
Yeah,
right
there's a
now.
place-
Oh, nice.
Have you been to Smoke Taco?
No.
Oh, dude.
Dude, it's brisket tacos.
I can't right now.
Dude, my wife and I are foodies, so
Yeah.
It's
You
amazing.
should try this place, Smoke Taco. They do like a brisket taco. They do all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
But we just literally segued into food.
right.
it is called Dad Bods
right.
Beards.
Just hey,
I am hungry too.
No, but with that, dude, I just thank you for coming on because that's the biggest thing is that I feel like as a show that aims towards men a lot, but that we do have a lot of women that listen. We have had a lot of women on the show that have had some amazing advice and amazing talking points. We try to give guys the tools and like the motivation, because obviously the big motivation versus discipline.
Yep. And
I feel like you're a good example of that. This has been a pleasant surprise episode for me. I mean, I loved hearing your story. I loved hearing everything you were talking about, but it's for lack of a better term of like kind of like grabbing the bull by the horns. Right? And I almost said grab the bull.
No,
grab the bull by the balls.
Grabbing the balls by the bull.
But it's literally as cliche as it sounds of like, you're going to make out of your life what you can.
Yeah.
I mean, we've sat down with people just like you that have had just like backgrounds and upbringings that some people could never imagine, that are claiming like, oh, I've had it so rough. And it's not lessening what anybody's been through, but it's more so highlighting like, it doesn't really matter what you've been through, because at the end of the day, like your level 10 hard is just as bad as someone else's level 10 hard in your own life, but you can still make something out of it. And so this has been extremely inspiring to me.
Thanks,
because
man.
this has been something that like I'm stuck in my own mental rut as much as we try to be, a light for some people. I know you're stuck in a rut too. And I feel like
I'm going to implement some stuff tonight.
Yeah. I'm
because of you.
I'm just even
like
going
this.
back to the mirror work, dude, of like, I'm just thinking of like, how many times do I look in the mirror in the day, but how many times am I looking at my eyes?
Yeah. Right.
Like, I mean, I've done some affirmation work and stuff in the mirror. I'm a big meditator, all that stuff. But like, I'm like, when's the last time and what you said too, of like, sit in front of the mirror. Every time we all look in the mirror, it's a quick glance in the door mirror, a quick glance in the
Make sure the
bathroom mirror.
stash is good, the beard's
Oh,
good.
by the way,
right?
he forgot to say you have to be naked.
Oh,
Yeah.
sure. but I'm just, as you're talking, I'm having this visual of like pulling up a chair and putting it in front of the full length mirror that's on the back of the bathroom.
Yeah.
Full length mirrors are the worst.
I mean, I consistently now have conversations with myself when I go in the bathroom.
Good for you.
I mean, it's just it's that check-in, that daily check-in, right? And it's, I always like to tell people, especially guys, like, think of all the things you like to do and how much time and energy and money you put into that. But at the end of the day, what's most important is you. So redirect that focus to you. And we say in my world in TMIC, be, do, have. Be a good person. You can do the things you want to do, and eventually you can have the things you want. It's not opposite. We got to take care of us first and foremost.
Well, it's a positive spin on what some people normally would call narcissism.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, I'm over here. I mean, the whole Greek mythology, right? Of like, he died by looking at himself, a reflection of himself in the river, right? Or the pond, versus I'm sitting here looking at the symbolism of like, I'm like, I need to put a big ass mirror in my office.
Yeah.
Not to look at myself, but just to do the mirror work and the symbolism of like what we've talked about of like, when you focus on yourself in a healthy and positive way, your whole inner circle benefits from that.
Absolutely.
And it's not narcissism. It's like, it's self-preservation in the best way possible. So Bill, thanks. I'm over here having like all these epiphanies by sitting here talking to you. But no, I appreciate you coming on here and sharing this. I think this is one thing we say all the time is that male vulnerability is a higher form of strength than just the silence.
Yeah.
Because
it's hard.
It is hard.
Inspires
It is really hard.
so many other
Creates
guys.
a lot of courage.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of courage.
Yeah.
So.
It is hard. And, thank you guys for having me on. It's an honor and a blessing to have these opportunities to share your story, and hopefully somebody out there listens to it and decides to take some action.
100%.
I promise you that will.
Where can we find you? Anybody?
I'm on all the social medias. I got my website, olympianspeaks.com or billschuffenhauer.com. I'm on every social media platform that our generation is on.
Sure. Yeah.
Are you working with Stanford Kind with Jessica?
Yes. Yeah. So I now, funny enough, I know we got to wrap up, but back when I was in that mindset, I literally thought I couldn't accomplish anything. Yeah. And from doing the work, I own 6 global companies. I'm on the board of the Olympic Committee. I'm getting ready to go to London to be a commentator for the Olympics next year. I mean, it's just,
man.
it's
That's
just,
awesome.
it's just awesome of what's been able to create.
It tells you.
Yeah.
It's mindset and just I love what you're doing.
Yeah.
Dude, I've learned a lot. This is freaking cool.
Thanks, man.
Well, I'm glad we have the opportunity to rub shoulders with you. We got we've got some stuff. Like I said, we'll bring you to a sneaker night. We're gonna do
Nice.
No joke. It's so much fun.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
And then you buy 26 shoes within
yeah.
2 weeks. And your wife is like, Tyson, no more.
Do it.
Well, go check out Bill. We'll link all the social medias as always. Bill, thank you. It's
Thank
been
you
a
guys.
pleasure.
Thank
And,
you guys. Thank you guys for doing this, man.
Oh,
Yeah.
this is fun. So, but check him out, and we will catch you guys next week.
Toodles.